Who's this guy? Okay, his name, does anybody recognize Colonel Russell Williams? Not many. Oh, get a load of this. That's his wife, Mary Elizabeth Harriman. I've been told by a judge named Jennifer McKinnon in Canada never to mention Mary Elizabeth Harriman, so I never do. But this guy right here, he used to fly the Queen around. When the Queen would come to Canada, Colonel Russell Williams would fly her around. Well, guess what he's known for? 82 fetish break-ins. I've never looked under a lady's skirt, but they have some type of, is it called knickers? Yeah, they've got something on there. I don't know what it is. I never looked. But they have a different top body than males, and they've got something up there too. Well, this guy right here, the rising star of the Canadian military, he broke into 82 female dwellings and went over and took certain items of clothing, and he put them in his house, and then this thing that he was married to, and by the way, I think this is a sham marriage. It's called beard. When two homosexuals get married to each other, but they want to look normal for political reasons. So much for Russell Williams. He's in jail for life. Oh, wait a minute. I don't have notes. I don't speak from notes.
His parents were immigrants. They came over in the 60s, and they worked in his dad worked in the nuclear plant in Toronto. And nuclear research. He was a metallurgist, and so he had humble beginnings. It wasn't like he came from lots of money, and but he had a really strange upbringing. If we talk about his parents, because they came over from Britain. He was born in Britain, came over with his parents and his brother, and at same time, another nuclear scientist came over from Czechoslovakia, and because they were both new to the neighborhood and both working in the same job, the fathers became good friends, being immigrants, and they would hang out together all the time. And by the time Russell was 6, the parents had swapped wives.
Get out of here!
Yeah, and now this is really crazy for the 60s. In the 1960s, how does it's not something. Originally, apparently, they were involved in a swingers club that was in town, and it was kind of underground because it was a fairly conservative city. A lot of military lived there, and so they belonged to a private swingers club. They would send all the kids to one house and have one babysitter take care of them all, and they would go do their swinging. Okay, and so this went on for a while, but what happened was Russell's mother found out that her husband, his father, had actually fallen in love with this other wife. So she picked the kids up and left and filed for divorce. And that was a huge controversy back then. In the 60s, it just wasn't going on. So they separated, divorced, and she took the kids and moved to Toronto, the big city. And he stayed with the new girl, and there was so much negative press that they decided to move to New York for a different job that he took, but they didn't last a year, and they broke up.
So what do you think? Because, we were talking off the air a little bit. Do you think that living under those kind of conditions with his parents, that maybe he was ever molested as a kid or something like that?
Well, that was interesting because when I was going through all of this, I thought, I'm roughly the same age as him, and I'm thinking in the 60s, if my parents would have split up and taken the neighbors, each other's spouse, and done all that, and then all of the talk, could you imagine the talk around town, and you go to school, and it would have been pretty devastating. So what I did was I approached a couple of psychiatrists and psychologists, and one was Diane Emerson, who was writing Psychopaths in Your Lives, and she's been all over the place, and I give her all the details. And at first I was thinking, from what he ended up doing later in his life with all the different women and how he used to torture them and do all these things, I was thinking, I wonder if he was abused or if this was something that happened between that split up. Now, her view was this is probably a behavior that he learned from his father. It's not that he was abused himself, but he saw his father abusing his mother, and also probably wearing woman's clothing. He learned that behavior because he's considered a sociopath, and he mimics. So what they do is at a very young age, at 4, 5, and 6, they learn to mimic behavior because they don't feel the same way as we do. They don't have the empathy. Like if a dog's dying on the road or someone's hurt, it's not like they feel, oh my God, I'm sad or sorry. They just copy what other people do around them. Learn how to cry, learn how to be upset, but they don't really feel it the same.
Henley has been accurate so far in his pinpointing of graves. Terribly, horribly accurate. Last night he found 2 more victims near Lake Sam Rayburn in East Texas. Victims he says he and his 2 friends lured with promises of parties. But the parties turned into sexual molestations, then into torture, and finally into death and burial for an ever-growing number of teenage boys. Henley wouldn't identify the Lake Sam Rayburn victims, but he did say they were all from the Houston area. Then the grisly tale unfolded even further. Henley pointed the grim-faced policeman toward the community of High Island, about 60 miles east of Houston, near the Gulf Coast. Digging started here early this afternoon. Searchers are confronted with a total of victims that seems to grow every hour, and they have no idea when it will stop growing. Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News on the Move, near High Island on the Gulf Coast.
Henley was up again early this morning and on his way once more to the deserted dirt road near Lake Sam Rayburn. But he was never out of San Augustine County Sheriff John Hoyt's sight. Henley reportedly balks at pointing out the graves of the victims while newsmen are present. So, like last night, newsmen waited while Henley went to the shallow graves. But Sheriff Hoyt had so much confidence in Henley that the men with shovels went in almost immediately behind them. Soon, word came that newsmen could be admitted. It was a trek through the underbrush, but we stood at the graves of what were, this morning, the latest in the seemingly never-ending list of victims. Henley refused to identify the victims for newsmen, but he did say they were all, these 2 and the ones recovered last night, were all from the Houston area. While refusing to be filmed, Henley was still quite talkative.
Wayne, how do you feel about this whole ordeal?
Pretty grotesque.
What do you mean by that?
You read the dictionary?
You've
No,
been carrying this around with you for a long time. I mean, didn't you almost crack several times?
Yeah.
How come this time?
This time, I just haven't felt like I was going to be able to hold my sanity much longer.
What provoked you that night for you to decide to tell it all?
I just think I owe these people this much to let them know what's happened to their boys.
And he should have never been on the streets. That is what Detroit Police Chief James Craig is saying about the suspected serial killer accused of 6 murders. This afternoon, we are learning a lot more about Kenaniel Brown's past. Nick Monoselli takes a closer look.
Good afternoon. Yes, some new details should be coming very shortly on this case, but the bottom line is this alleged serial killer was in federal custody, had a whole list of parole violations while he was out on a charge, and now an agency allegedly is the one who told the Department of Justice to let him back out.
He saw him, and then, he came out from in the back, pulled up the guy's picture on his phone, showed the clerk that was working, and said, hey, look, I really think this is who this is.
A janitor working at an adult bookstore Monday spotted the man wanted by the U.S. Marshals and Detroit police. Police have linked Kenaniel Brown to 6 murders in River Rouge, Highland Park, and Detroit. They spotted Brown jumping fences, and only local 4 cameras were there as officers swarmed a backyard and captured Brown moments after he shot himself in the head. But now we're learning Brown has a criminal history dating back to 1997 and should have been in prison, but a federal law enforcement agency asked he be let out. That history includes assault with a dangerous weapon, fleeing police officers, and multiple weapons charges. During his last arrest in 2014 for having a stolen 9mm handgun, he told police, I didn't even fire the gun. The only reason I have the mag is because it's crazy out here. During his sentencing, it came out Brown was working as an informant. After serving 14 months, Brown was let out, but he failed drug tests, didn't check in with drug counselors, and was arrested for drunk driving while on probation. But he was let go. The Detroit News quoting a U.S. District Court spokesman saying, our court released Mr. Brown at the behest of a federal law enforcement agency. We cannot elaborate further at this time. Detroit Police Chief James Craig told the newspaper, someone needs to explain to the families of Brown's victims why this guy was allowed to stay out of prison. I understand the need for informants, but was the information he provided worth 6 lives? Now, as far as a medical condition on him, the last time we checked, even though he shot himself in the head, he was still in critical condition. I'm Nick Monoselli, Local 4.
Sound check. You want a sound check from us? I'm all set.
I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
I want you to give this question a lot of consideration. You don't have to answer me now, but can you imagine what it would be like to be interrogated by the SS?
I don't know whether I could imagine it or not.
Think about it.
Well, I know what their tactics are. Okay. Can I answer it after the interview?
There's no doubt about it, is there?
Can I answer it after the interview?
Very serious, isn't it?
Sure it is. Can I answer you after the interview?
No, you don't have to answer me. You can just think about it.
I will.
In your everyday doings.
Let's talk about helter-skelter.
The people that you let run your lives aren't very nice. The people that govern you, the people that tell you people what to do, they're not good people.
Let me change the subject for a minute.